This whole satanic rituals rappers don't want you to see thing. You seen that?
Oh, yeah. It's making the rounds.
It's got people talking, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're diving into an article today that really dissects it.
Cool.
So it's like, these accusations about satanic influences in music, especially hip hop,
Right.
they're not new.
They pop up every, I feel like it's every 5 years or so.
It's like clockwork.
Yeah.
But this article we're looking at today, it does something that I think is really interesting, is that it doesn't just dismiss it. It actually tries to understand why these claims are being made and how they often misunderstand artistic expression.
Right.
And one of the things that really stuck out was how much this video focuses on symbolism, especially in the work of Lil Uzi Vert. So they're pointing to his use of 666 upside-down crosses, even comparing his pronunciation of certain words to Lucifer and saying, this is evidence.
Right.
But evidence of what?
It's what is the argument here?
Yeah, exactly. Are we really saying that just because someone uses certain imagery, they're automatically part of some satanic cult?
I mean, that's what they seem to be implying, but it completely ignores the very nature of art.
Right.
Particularly in a genre like hip-hop, which has always been about pushing boundaries.
Totally.
Challenging the mainstream.
Right.
Provocation.
Yeah, it'd be like saying, what every heavy metal band with a skull on their album cover is performing sacrifices backstage?
Exactly. Exactly. It's such a simplification. Think about someone like Lil Uzi Vert.
Right.
He thrives on provocation. Shock value. It's practically woven into his artistic DNA.
And it's not like this is new for hip-hop. I mean, you could go back to the 80s and find artists using really provocative imagery to make a statement.
Absolutely. This is part of a lineage.
Yes.
And the article makes this really interesting point about how shock value can be a form of commentary in itself. It forces you to confront something, to react, to think.
So it's less about actually worshiping the devil and more about getting a rise out of
everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Challenging the status quo. It's about sparking a conversation, not necessarily an initiation ritual.
Right. Right. It's they forgot that artists are allowed to play with ideas, to be ironic, to be satirical.
Of course.
To be tongue-in-cheek even.
And that's where it gets tricky, right? Because how do you, as a listener, determine the artist's intent? Are you looking at these symbols in a vacuum or considering the bigger picture?
Right. That's a really good point. That's the million-dollar question, I think, especially in the age of social media where everything's so fragmented.
Exactly.
It's you're only seeing a tiny piece of the puzzle.
Yes.
And it makes me think about the next artist that this video really goes after, which is Lil Nas X.
Right.
And his Montero Call Me By Your Name video.
Of course, yes.
Which, we should say is a masterclass in deliberate provocation.
It is.
You've got the pole dancing down to hell, the lap dance with the devil,
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot to process. So the question is he actually promoting Satanism, or is there something else going on?
Well, this is where that deeper analysis comes in. The article argues that Lil Nas X isn't actually trying to convert anyone to Satanism. He's using these really charged symbols to confront hypocrisy, to spark dialogue about religion and sexuality, particularly within a culture that often demonizes those who don't conform.
He's kind of taking back the narrative, flipping the script.
Yes, and let's not forget the specific symbols he's using. The pentagram, the figure of Baphomet, these have a rich history that extends far beyond Satanism. They represent rebellion, challenging authority, turning traditional ideas on their head.
So when we see Lil Nas X rocking a pentagram, it's less hail Satan and more
hail individuality.
There we go. I was trying to find the right word.
Yes. He's reclaiming those symbols, giving them new meaning within the context of his own identity. It's a powerful statement.
Right. And it's something that this video conveniently overlooks.
Exactly.
But it's not just these two, right? This video kind of goes on to list all these other artists like Playboi Carti, Tyler, the Creator.
It's they're trying to create this grand narrative of this vast satanic conspiracy within hip-hop. And anyone who even comes close to that aesthetic gets lumped in.
Which I think, ironically, undermines their whole argument.
How so?
Because the video itself is acknowledging that these artists have a massive platform. They have a massive influence, especially on young people.
Huge influence. Yeah.
They're practically admitting that these artists' messages are getting through, pentagrams or not.
That's a really astute observation, and it highlights a really crucial point. Influence doesn't equal indoctrination. These artists are powerful because they're tapping into something real. They're speaking to experiences that resonate with people. That's way more compelling than some imaginary satanic agenda.
Right. It's like if you have to invent this whole conspiracy theory to explain why people connect with their music, you're probably missing something.
Right. And it's important to remember that just because an artist is popular or influential, it doesn't mean they're above criticism or that we have to agree with everything they do.
Of course not.
Right. But this video isn't about thoughtful critique. It's about painting with a very broad and inaccurate brush.
Totally. And speaking of challenging worldviews, because that's really what this is about, isn't it?
It is.
This video doesn't just focus on individual artists. It tries to link this to a larger scheme to, well, corrupt the youth.
Right, which is where we really start venturing into full-blown conspiracy theory territory. But again, it speaks to a deeper anxiety about art and its power.
It's like they're afraid of anything that disrupts the status quo.
Right, and this is where media literacy becomes so crucial.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you can't just accept everything you see at face value, especially when it comes to something as open to interpretation as art.
Right. And I think that's such a good point to end on, that idea of media literacy. It's about asking those critical questions. Don't just let somebody tell you what to think, especially when they have such a clear agenda.
And it's not just about spotting misinformation. It's also about being open to understanding why certain types of art make us uncomfortable. What is it about these symbols, these themes, that evoke such a strong reaction?
It's like they say, sometimes the things that scare us the most are the things we need to examine the closest.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole conversation so fascinating. It's not just about debunking a video. It's about understanding the cultural anxieties that fuel these kinds of claims in the first place.
It's like this whole thing comes from a place of not really getting it, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Like they just throw around Satanism like it's like one thing.
Right. It's way more complicated than that. There's so many different beliefs and practices that kind of get locked in.
Right, exactly. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
You've got themistic Satanism, where Satan is actually worshipped.
Okay.
And then you've got Levian Satanism, which is more about like individualism, rejecting traditional morality.
Okay, yeah.
And then you have tons of artists who use the imagery as like a form of rebellion, social commentary.
Right.
Without actually like, being a part of any specific belief system.
Right. It's more about the statement.
Exactly. Reclaiming symbols, provoking a reaction.
Yeah.
Challenging the status quo.
Right. And this video just throws it all together.
It's such a mess, honestly, the way they present it. They use this one example from Sababi.
Yes. Tell me about that.
So they try to say that he's part of this like, big satanic hip hop network.
Right.
But they totally leave out the fact that he's actually talked about his use of 666.
And what does he say?
He said that for him, it's not about Satanism at all. It's about Black empowerment. He's reclaiming a symbol that's usually seen as negative.
Yeah.
And he's using it to represent strength, resilience.
That's so interesting how they just like ignore that part.
Well, that's the thing. They need to fit everyone into their little narrative.
Right. Even when the artists themselves are like contradicting what they're saying.
Exactly. They're literally saying this is what it means. And the artists are like, no, it doesn't.
This is my art.
Right. Let me speak for myself.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to shut down the conversation before it even starts.
Totally. Don't even like engage with it. Just be afraid.
Exactly. Which is a shame because there's so much to unpack when it comes to hip hop and, religious imagery in general.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about Satanism. You see Christian imagery, Islamic imagery, all sorts of spiritual references woven in.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to the genre's roots in storytelling, in mythology, finding meaning from all these different places.
Yeah. It's like how they sample from different music.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're taking these different traditions, different beliefs, and using them to create something new.
Right. And sometimes it's about challenging those traditions too.
Oh, absolutely. Turning them on their head.
Yeah.
Using them in unexpected ways, which is where things get really interesting,
Yeah.
Because it makes us confront our own ideas about what these symbols mean.
Our own assumptions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it challenges us to look beyond just the surface level.
To think critically.
Yes. Engage with it on a deeper level.
And maybe learn something in the process.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Art has this amazing way of holding up a mirror to society, right? Making us question our beliefs, our values.
Our fears.
Our fears. Exactly.
Sometimes that's uncomfortable.
Of course it's uncomfortable. But that discomfort, that's valuable.
It is. It's how we grow.
It's how we grow, it's how we evolve, how we see the world in new ways.
That's worth celebrating.
Exactly. Not condemning.
So, are we scared of art or are we curious about it? That's kind of what it comes down to, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
And if we let that fear win, if we let these crazy claims get to us, we miss the whole point.
We miss the chance to learn something, to grow, to understand the world better.
Right. And hip-hop especially, it's always reflecting what's going on, with people who don't always get heard.
It's about speaking up, challenging things. And sometimes that means using images and words that make people uncomfortable.
Exactly. It's about pushing those boundaries. And if we back away from that, we're basically saying you can only talk about your experiences if we say it's okay.
And that's not how art works at all.
Not at all. Art needs to be free, to make you feel something, to make you think.
Even if it's a little out there sometimes.
Exactly. What's shocking one day might be totally normal the next.
It's true. It's like that saying, art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable.
I love that quote. It's like a guidebook for how we should approach art, especially when it's pushing those buttons.
Don't shy away from it. Really think about it.
Exactly. Why does it make you uncomfortable? What's the artist trying to do? What's going on inside you when you see it or hear it?
That's where the real learning happens, when we ask those questions.
Exactly. That's when we connect with each other, break down those walls, and really start to see things differently.
That's awesome. So if there's one thing to take away from this whole thing, it's that you got to go deeper with art, especially music like hip-hop. Don't just skim the surface.
Think about the context, the meaning behind it, all those layers.
Exactly. Art is meant to be felt. It's meant to be talked about, even argued about.
So next time you see something that makes you uncomfortable, something that challenges your views, lean in.
Don't back away. Embrace it. Figure out why it gets to you.
Because those moments, that's where the good stuff is.
That's how we connect, how we grow. That's what it's all about. Until next time, keep exploring.